this to allow people to join at any time. Let me see. Okay, so you're welcome to this session. Here would be, this is for alumni, as we are already aware. Here we are only trying to see how we can support ourselves further with our learnings, so that we, whatever gray areas we still have, especially for those of us that we are practicing some things out, or we are on a job that is related to analysis, we want to have the sessions monthly so that we can unblock ourselves of those gray areas. So that's primarily the essence of this session that we're having. And this, as we know, would happen every third Saturday of the month, God willing. That's the first one. And after the request that I sent on the group for people to share areas you want us to look at, we got something around Power Automate and how it links to Power BI, and something on DAX as well. So hopefully we get some other areas, but this will be where we'll focus on for now. For Power Automate today, we'll be looking at more of an introduction to Power Automate, as I understand that it's possible that we have some of us who have not had to interact with it at all. So it would not do us so much good if we go straight into some of the use cases, as that might not really serve. It wouldn't give us the needed foundation. So today, my plan is to take us through more of an introduction, and then the next session also most likely will be on Power Automate, where we now explore how Power Automate directly connects to Power BI and some things that we do. I'm going to start recording the session now. So, okay, I think I'm recording already. Yep, so it's been recorded already. Okay, so again, is that for the sessions, we would not exceed an hour whenever we meet this way. We understand that we have individuals have different other commitments, and this should not interfere with our already scheduled commitments. I also want to appreciate us for making our time to be here. It's one thing for us to want to do. It's a different thing entirely for people to heed to the call. Thanks for making this happen, everyone on the call. Yeah. Let me share my screen now so we can go right into this. Okay, and then I bring this here. 1 second. All right. So when we talk about Power Automate, Power Automate belongs to the family of products called the Power Platform. Okay. So then in the Power Platform, we have 5 products primarily in the Power Platform. So we have the Power Apps, there's the Power BI, there is the Power Automate. There used to be a Power Virtual Agent, which is now called the Copilot Studio. And there used to be a component of Power Apps, which used to be Power Apps Portal, but now it's called Power Pages. So summarily, as of today, there are 5 products in the Power Platform. We have the Power Apps, that is the Power Automate, Power BI, Power Virtual Agent, which is now Copilot Studio, and we have Power Pages. Just a summary of what each of these do. So first is Power BI. We know Power BI already. So Power BI is for business and data analytics. Power BI belongs to the family of Power Platform because it's also regarded as a low-code tool. But let me rewind a bit so that we understand how this all interconnects. If you look at the Microsoft, and by the way, these sessions will be more of a freestyle. most times I would not have a slide pre-designed for this conversation. So we just, but again, it doesn't mean that the flow will be distorted. The flow will still be intact. I just want to prep our minds as to how we run this. So generally for Microsoft, there are different categories of products that Microsoft have. So for Microsoft, we have the Office tool, which is the set of tools that are Office related. So where we have the Microsoft Excel, the Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Access, and the likes of those. Those belong to the Office tool category, which Microsoft called the Microsoft 365 today. Then we have the Microsoft Cloud Services. So the cloud services, these are the ones that belong to the family name of Microsoft Azure or Microsoft Azure Cloud. And every single Microsoft product that primarily relies on the cloud for its usage implementation, they belong to the Microsoft Azure family. So it's possible that you have certain products that work offline and still has a replica of it on the cloud, but just know that Azure as a platform is what Microsoft uses to support any product of theirs that work on the cloud. An example is an Azure SQL Server. So normally you have a SQL Server that you can install on your own desktop, on your laptop, that works offline. Just for everyone on the call, you remember when we went through the SQL part of the course, where we had to install SQL Server on your local computer. So that is a database engine. So that database engine is only available to you on your system. What that means is that if for whatever reason your own databases that you've created on the database engine. So maybe you have a database that you called Arike and Co. That's a database that you use to manage your own data that you've stored on your own PC. So that's database as it is on your PC. If you need someone else to use it, you will have to do an export of the backup file, share with the person, they restore the database on their own system before they can use that database. Unlike if you want them to have a free access. So if you want them to have a direct access to the database, then that database has to be hosted where anyone can access it, which is what will bring the cloud into the conversation. Excuse me. All right, apologies. So now, what I would mean is that you need to host that database on the cloud, which then makes it accessible to everybody who you want them to access it. So whenever Microsoft has a product that they want to make accessible by way of people subscribing to the usage, they sort of put it on the cloud and then it becomes accessible. So the cloud infrastructure for Microsoft, where Microsoft or via which Microsoft uses to enable anything cloud related, is the Microsoft Azure. So we have the Microsoft Office, then we have the Microsoft Azure. Then beyond the Microsoft Azure,
Hello, Fiona. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. So beyond the Microsoft Office and the Azure, Microsoft has another suite of products which they use which they call the low-code tools. Before now, some 5 years back, there about or 4 years, the conversation around low code became very popular. That people started talking about low code tools here and there, and then they were talking about how people can begin to develop applications without writing significant amount of codes or without having to write traditional codes as people would normally do. And that was what brought about the concept of low code or pro code or no code at all. So Microsoft then came up with a suite of products that they put together that would serve this purpose, such that an individual intent within an organization to develop an application, they can actually develop this application without a coding background. So by way of going into a design environment and by clicking certain buttons to achieve what they want to achieve. So that is what we mean by low code. So for Microsoft, the low code product is what they call the Microsoft Power Platform. And now the Power Platform in itself has 5 products, which I mentioned earlier. So in the Power Platform, we have Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, Copilot Studio, and Power Pages. So Power Apps is used to develop internal applications. And when we say internal applications, it means that they are applications that you want to use within a business environment, not for externals. For example, there's a particular process within your organization that normally will require people to use physical forms. Maybe it's an attendance thing within the organization. We know that even as of today, there are some traditional organizations that when you go into the security post, you need to still fill a form. You fill a form, you need to sign in, you need to sign out when you're leaving. That's a process. And what it means is that maybe at the end of the day, that book is taken to the chief security officer or the head of admin or whoever's in charge, and then the person has to vet the entire list to ensure that everyone that clocked in had clocked out, or maybe just to ensure that there's no visitor still left in the environment, or maybe to even now begin to type in the data for that day, the list for that day, into a system just for record purposes. This could be things that would happen after that particular process. So what Power Apps would do is that you can now have an application developed that would be usable, that will be available on a mobile phone, maybe a tab, and you can have the tab stationed at the security post. So a new visitor comes in, they don't have to use pen and paper to sign to clock in. They just go into the application, they enter a few details, and they clock in. And when they're done, they are going out, they clock out also on the application. And the data that's being generated by way of they clocking in and clocking out, the data is immediately transferred into a data storage. So the storage behind the application can be a Microsoft Excel file, Microsoft Excel Online, or could be a SharePoint list, or could be an actual database like a SQL Server database or whatever. So that's the idea of Power Apps. So think about Power Apps whenever you have a case where there are certain things that are manual within the organization that will require you to generate or write data. You can develop an application for that will be used internally within the organization. There are different kinds of powers as well, but just an overview. Then we have the Power Automate. Automate is used to automate processes like the name implies. So imagine there's a case where within the organization, maybe it's a procurement process. When someone raises a need for an acquisition, the approval will have to go through a couple of persons. So the natural way that organizations manage this, especially well-structured organizations, big organizations, is that so someone raises a request from a user department, maybe finance, they want to purchase a printer, for example. There is a request, and then there is a requisition form that they have to fill, and that form is now taken to the head of the department, that's head of finance, who is going to approve and then justify the need for that. And that is then taken to the procurement department to also admit on this. Okay, we have a budget for this and so, and then that is now taken back to maybe finance or maybe the head of procurement for approval. It goes back to finance to disburse the fund. It goes back to supply chain. A lot of process all in between. So when this happens, what normally we experience in cases like this is there will be delays in approval, because for example, the head of finance is supposed to give the initial approval based on leave, and he did not delegate that particular authority to anybody. So it becomes, the process gets stalled at that point in time, and there's no way the process could progress. So these are the problems with that. But if you have a Power Automate flow that's been designed, again, for a process like this, there will already be maybe a Microsoft form that's a type that people would use to make their requisition, or there's a Power Apps that people would use to enter the requisition itself. And then there will be a Power Automate flow that now manages the end-to-end approval process. So as soon as the end of finance approves, the flow will trigger something else that goes to the next person that's supposed to approve. And that one, when it approves or rejects, it goes to the next person until it gets to the final person that's supposed to approve. So what Power Automate does is that it helps you automate a seemingly manual process by way of digitizing it and connecting all of the systems in between. So that's what Power Automate does. So Power Automate, in most cases, it's not used as a single application that manages an entire process. It's most times used as a bridge to bridge the gap between certain processes or certain tools to enhance what is possible within those tools. There are a few use cases where you can use Power Automate itself to manage an entire process. Maybe sometime in the near future, we might have to explore something like that. But just have it in mind now that you have, for example, a Power Apps that is used for an attendance. As soon as someone enters attendance details, they clock in, maybe there's unexpected hours that they are supposed to spend in the building. Once it's almost time for that hour to elapse, Power Automate can be used to trigger a reminder to the security person that someone is still in the building that's supposed to be out. So those are the kind of use cases that you can have Power Automate manage in the business. So that's Power Automate. So we've talked about Power Apps, we've talked about Power Automate. Then Power BI you already know is for business analytics. So you have a Power Apps, for example, that's generating data. You have an Excel that's saving data for you. You have a SQL Server database. You have your data all around. You want to make sense of this data, then that's where Power BI comes in to the picture. Then we have the Copilot Studio. I mentioned earlier that Copilot Studio used to be called Power Virtual Agent. And when we say something is an agent, essentially it's supposed to be a replica of a human being. That's what agents are. So when you think about agents, and today they talk about agentic AI, they talk about all sorts of things. But the baseline for agents is that you have a human being who is supposed to administer certain processes. We're supposed to do certain things, normally traditional ways. Now we want to replace that individual by something that would act like that individual. That is what an agent is. So it's different from automation in certain ways. Automation, there are predefined steps. Step A has to be completed before step B happens, before step C happens. There is no room for a tool to think within the process. There's no room for that. So it's more like saying that do A, then do B, then do C. If C is not available, do D. If C is available, do E. That's what automation is. But when we say something is an agent, what it means is that do A, do B, then within B, think about the process. Maybe what is most likely, if the process is like 80%, you can do C. If it's like 60%, can do D. Then we are allowing for some level of thought process to come in place based on the data available that's been passed into the tool itself. That's what agents are. So when we talk about Power Virtual Agent, it's more about what people used to use it for at the time is more of building traditional chatbots. So you remember that there are times that you go on a platform, you go on a website, and then somewhere on the website, you see something like chat with me, chat here, something like that. A lot of the times at the start, you're not chatting with a real human being. You're chatting with a bot that has been preloaded with questions that people normally would ask. And so what happens with a bot is that when you now have certain questions, there have been predefined responses that if someone says good afternoon, you say good afternoon and you mention their name. If someone says I need responses to so, what the agent will do is that it flags that question, picks it and matches it against the predefined questions on the system. If you find something similar, it gives you a response. If it doesn't find something similar, it tries to rewrite your question, recoins it in a way that matches something on the system and forces you to pick from a selection. And that is why it's an agent. So because it's able to think through what the input is and layers that against what it has been preloaded for it to define what the output to you would be. So before now, Power Virtual Agent, we use it to build intelligent chatbot that people can use in customer service. Some people in the bank, they use it to manage requests from different customers. You see on the website, you see a chat me feature on the website and the likes like that. And then Microsoft now modified it to be Copilot Studio, which essentially does almost the same thing. It's more about building bots and the likes of those. Then the last one is Power Pages. So Power Pages before now, or Power Pages again, is Power Apps, remember, is for building internal applications. Power Pages is for building external applications, external facing application, or we say building websites. So before now, Power Apps used to be the encompassing application to say that you can either use Power Apps to build internal application or you use it for external application. So the external application of Power Apps is used to be called Power Portal, but Microsoft remodeled it and they now call it Power Pages. So Power Pages is what you now use to build an application that your customers who are external to you, they can use to interact with you. And when we say anything is external in the context of anything Microsoft, it's more like the person that wants to use that application that you have developed, the person is not signed up on your domain. We have a company, ID Analytics. We have a domain with Microsoft, which means we have bought certain subscription from Microsoft, which makes us have email addresses, for example, to say mohsin@idanalytics.com. If a Messi now wants to interact with me, Messi is not on that domain. We did not create an account for Messi. If I want to build an application that will enable Messi to be able to interact with us in the business, then it will be an external facing application. So that's the concept of external. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be external, but what it means is that it has to be that those that would be interacting with you over that, they are people that are not signed up within your organization. So now, these are the Power Platform applications or the Power Platform products. Like I mentioned, they are all low-code products, which means whatever you're doing within them, you are necessarily not writing significant codes or you're writing very little code. For Power Platform, generally, they have a language, which is called PowerFX. Power Platform generally has a language called PowerFX. So PowerFX is more like Excel has its formula language. Power BI has its formula language. We came for Power Pivot. PowerFX is a language that's supposed to work across the Power Platform product. But as of today, PowerFX works in Power Apps. Power Automate has this language, which has been the traditional language over time. They call it Power Automate Expressions. But in the near future, is one of the things in pipeline. Microsoft is already trying to adapt all of these products to use the PowerFX. So maybe not. Maybe some years down the line, a decade thereabout, PowerFX might be modified in a way that is also adaptable to Power BI, such that within Power BI, you're able to write PowerFX. But PowerFX is not something complicated. A lot of the functions in PowerFX and the syntax and how it works is similar to what you already know in DAX. So maybe sometime down the line, if you ever have to explore something in Power Apps, we are going to see how PowerFX actually works. So you see functions like sum, like if, like count. You see functions like, so it has other functions like remove, like delete, like patch, and the likes of those. But again, is that you don't necessarily have to learn all. Get the foundations correctly. When you need to know to use something, you can always get help from the web on that. So this is an overview of what Power Platform is all about. But for the sake of this conversation today, we want to narrow it down to Power Automate. So Power Automate is like that. It's like that gate that gives you access to every other thing. Think about it this way: you have a Power BI report, and this Power BI report, you have enabled a write back. What do I mean? So now, for Power BI natively only supports a read only. So you can only read data from a database. You cannot from Power BI write data into a database, which is the concept of write back. But there is a way you can use Power BI to write back into the database. How do I mean? So take for instance that you have a report already built, and then on the report, on the transaction line items, you have a manager who is supposed to review that report, and whatever comment is passing on any transaction, you want that comment to be saved in the database for reference purposes. Maybe you already know that this line manager is someone that it will say something today and then tomorrow you say it's not that way. So what you're trying to do is that, or maybe that's not even the case. It might just be something important for you, maybe for audit purposes, or for the different businesses that maybe at the end of the year you need to engage an audit firm to come and be your external auditor to audit whatever you've done that year. Regardless, in any of the situation, what you want to achieve is that wherever comment someone has over something on the report, you want the comment to be saved and written back into like a data source. So the data source might be a SharePoint, it might be a SQL Server, it might be whatever, but you want that to be saved as well. So that's it. That's the concept of write back. So what you can do is that you can use a Power Apps. You can have a Power Apps embedded in your Power BI report to enable that write back. Remember, Power Apps is an application that you can build that can help you gather data with all of the scenarios that I've painted earlier. So you have that already. You have Power Apps embedded in Power BI, and then so through that Power Apps, a write back happens into the database, and the data is also momentarily it's visualized on the same report. So what will make the data to be available immediately back on the report, more like someone types in a comment now on that app within the Power BI environment, that data, once the person clicks submit, that data goes into the database. One thing you can do to make that data come back into the Power BI in seconds and is available on a section of the report immediately is to plug a Power Automate to it and use Power Automate to trigger a refresh. So that is a use case, which is a way of saying that there is a gap between the Power Apps data that's been written to the database now, but that gap, you want to bridge it so that the data, as it hits the database, you want the data to come back into Power BI and gets visualized as a line item on the report. What you can do is to now use a Power Automate to manage that flow. So that's what you can do on that. So what I want to bring out from here is many times Power Automate sits in the middle to help you to bridge or some gaps within what you're doing. Another use case is this. So think about it this way. You have like the example that I gave earlier, which is a case of at the security post, someone is supposed to have left. They're still in, they've not clocked out. It's Power Automate that you can use to trigger a reminder to somebody, maybe the security person or someone else. It's Power Automate you can use to manage that. But one that relates to data is this. You have built a report and then you want to distribute this report to people like every day. You want to distribute the report to people every day, but you want to distribute it in PDF format, for example. You don't want them to get it in just any irregular format, or you don't want to do a screenshot, because if you use Power BI subscription, many times it just comes out like a screenshot and it shares that with you. So you want to package it in a natural PDF format or in a PowerPoint format. Maybe it's something that they use for every week meetings. So you want the report to be ready and then the report gets to them every morning before their meeting or every week before their meeting. So you use Power Automate to manage such an instance. And again, another use case is that you know that if you're on Power BI Pro, you have a limitation as to how many refreshes you can have every day. If you're on Power BI Pro, you have a maximum of 8. If you're on Power BI Premium, which is now Fabric, it can be less than 64 cores, 64 CPU. So if you're on Fabric 64 CPU, you can have up to say 48 refreshes every day. But for whatever reason, let's say you're on Power BI Pro, which means your refresh is capped at 8 refreshes per day. You now want to have more than 8 refreshes. So what you can do is to use Power Automate to refresh your report. So you can use Power Automate to refresh your data set. And then again, with Power Automate, you can decide to refresh every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 1 hour. So that's left to you to do. So, but that will still be within the confines of what's available to you. So those are some use cases. There are a lot of use cases for how Power Automate can be used to enhance Power BI. But just think of Power Automate as an enhancer. A Power BI naturally does the job. So Power BI is like your Toyota Corolla, but you now want a premium. You want more comfort within your Power BI. You want Power BI to do extra stuff that you wouldn't have been able to do natively. You can use Power Automate to enhance what Power BI can do. But bear in mind, Power BI has a separate licensing, as you already know. So as of today, Power BI Pro license sits at $14 per user per month. Up until last year, it was still $9.99, so which was $10 per user per month. But now Power BI Pro sits at $14 per user per month, which means that, and Power BI license doesn't cover any other thing. So unlike your Microsoft Office, so if you're buying Microsoft 365 E3 license as of today, you can get it at $6 per user per month, which will cover all of your Office tool. In addition, you will get a Power Apps license and a Power Automate license. But Power BI license is never embedded in Microsoft 365 license, so they sell it as a standalone product. So what that means is that if your organization is on Google, for example, and now they subscribe to Power BI alone, you still would not have access to Power Apps. For you to get Power Apps at the minimal level, your organization must be subscribed to Microsoft 365 E3 license, or maybe E5 or Business Central, but it has to be a Microsoft 365 license. So that Microsoft 365 license will give you, at the baseline, will give you an entry Power Automate license, which you can use to do some stuff. But if you want to do more advanced stuff, especially having to use more sophisticated connectors, like you want to be able to read data from SQL Server or write data into SQL Server, write data into Snowflake and the likes of those, you will need a premium Power Automate license. As of today, I'm not sure what the pricing will be, but again, I wouldn't expect it to be more than a normal Power BI license. But this is just to let you know that if you want to try today, you're not you do not have access to an organization's Power BI, an organization's Microsoft account, you may not be able to practice stuff in Power Automate yet, except you go the route of having to create a free account, which you can use to do some practice. So enough of all these introductory calls, but again, those are important things to note, especially because so that when you run into certain things, you are trying to sign into Power Automate, you want to be sure whether things would work for you or not. So those are very important information to have. So when you want to sign into Power Automate, you just need to go into your browser and you do powerautomate.com. So if you do powerautomate.com, so this will go into the Power Automate home page, which is like for every application, for every portal you try to sign into, you get a landing page like this. On this landing page, there are some things that are quite important. Some things are quite important for us to pay attention to. Number one is what you have on this left pane. Then at the top right, you have what is called the environment, and there are a few things here which we're going to talk about. So today we'll just assess this environment as a whole, so that it gives us the needed foundation. And from the next class, we try as much as possible to now begin to explore certain use cases, maybe one or two, before we now go into some other areas that you have mentioned. So I'm using a different system. So I'm trying to download Zoomit, so I can zoom into the screen. So this should take just some seconds. Yeah, so this is up already. Zoom 64, run this. Agree. Okay, yeah, so this is up. So now if we come here now, second, if we come here and I zoom into this, so look at what happens. So here now, we have the left pane. You have the home, that is the landing page. And on this landing page, Microsoft has embedded a Copilot. So which means here now, as of today, you can describe what you want to do, type in some prompts, generate it, and Power Automate will attempt to create the flow for you. But that's not the conversation now. Then we have the create. So if I come here to create, this is where we can begin to create our flows. But I'll come back to this in a bit. The other thing we have here are templates. So when we say template, these are pre-designed workflows based on what people typically do in different work environments. So you see here we have different, they have been categorized into different blocks. If you want to see things that are related to approval, you can switch to approval, and you see different workflows. So you see this one, send approval and follow up via Teams. You see this one, request approval. Everyone must approve for a selected file. So maybe there's a file that has to go out to a customer, for example, but within the organization, there are people that have to approve before the file goes out. So you can use something like this. So the file is created, and then Power Automate helps you manage the different approval process. Someone approves, then goes to the next person, the person approves. If anyone has to decline along the line, the entire flow stops, the flow does not proceed, and you can reroute it back to the initiator to see that this thing has stopped and the process has been stalled, something like that. So then we have, if the flow has to do with emails, I mean, automation has to do with emails, then you can have something like this. So templates are a good way to start to learn Power Automate. Might just want to, for example, let's say I want to do something with, so I say refresh Power BI data set. I want to search for something that can a template. So you see now we have refresh a Power BI data set when a process step changes. So this might be something to give a start. More like to say that, okay, if you go into this flow now, but again, is that whenever you want to use a template, if I go in here, this will tell me all of the different bits that are connected that I need to have access to for me to use this template. So you see that for this guy here, for this particular template, I need to have access to one plan, so which is like a third-party tool, and I need to be signed in into Power BI, which is logical because I want to refresh the Power BI data set. So as at this time, I'm not signed in into Power BI, so I need to sign in. I do not have a one plan account. I need to create one. If I have this tool, then this button becomes active and I can continue. So it just creates the flow for me, which I can use almost immediately. But just bear in mind that whenever you want to use a template, whatever the different bits that make up that template is, you need to have access to every one of them. But again, you can explore as many templates as possible. This will give you some good learning point as to what is possible and how to build stuff. Then on the left pane, we also have Learn. So this has some Power Automate related resources. And this, they had in Microsoft Learn resources, so which you could normally access if you go to microsoftlearn.com. You would see some of these resources. If you want to read documentation, you see get started with cloud flows, you can go in here to read certain things. Depending, for some people, I do documentation at times, while some other times I just want to watch the videos. So it depends on your own reading pattern. If you are fine with documentation, you will want to explore some of these. If you want to use Microsoft created tutorials, that's tutorial video for Power Automate, you have a few of the links at the top here as well. Then here we now have my flows. So if I go into my flows, this is where you see all of the flows that you have created. Every single flow that you've had to create, you see them here. You see that on this account, I've only created a flow, which I called marketing. This flow was last modified 4 weeks ago, and it's an instant flow. I'll come back to what instant means. Then we have approvals. So like I mentioned, that you can create a flow that would manage different approval processes. Any approval that comes to you, you can access it under approvals here, which means you have been made an approver in a particular process. Then it's your turn to approve. That notification comes here, so you can manage all of the approval related notifications under the approvals tab. One interesting thing about Power Automate is also that on your mobile device, if you go into the Microsoft Store, I do not know about the Apple Store, but if you go into the Microsoft Store, you can download a Power Automate application. So the same credential that you use to sign in on the Microsoft Power Automate on the web, use that same credential to sign in on your mobile device, and it just gives you have an approval, then it just comes directly into your phone and you can approve right from your phone. So that's the idea. Then every flow that you create as well, anything that you create in Power Automate, that's what we call flows anyway. So every flow that you create, those also you can manage them on your mobile device. Then in Power Platform generally, we have the concept of solutions. So what solutions mean is that you want to find a way to bundle things together. Let's say, for example, you are building something for a business case. And within that build, you'll be using a Power Apps, you'll be using a Power Automate, you will have a Power BI report. You can put all of them together as a solution and create them inside a solution. What I will help you to do is to be able to manage all of the interdependencies from a single standpoint. So you don't have to go into separate places and have to be looking for things around. So you want to, for this business case, you have created a solution. It makes it easy for you to manage the different bits and entities. And again, you want to delete, you want to create, recreate, it makes it all easy. Then there's the automation center. I do not remember what this is for. Let me see what this brings out. Okay, still loading. Automation center. Okay. This what it's called now. So now the automation center. So this that you see here, it's more like before now we have what is called the AI builder. And what AI builder used to be for is an AI feature or an AI tool that's embedded into Power Automate and Power Apps. And what that does for you is you can use them to read documents. Let's say, for instance, now as part of the automation that you're building, which is something I did for a client in the oil and gas industry. So for that client, they used to have a number of invoices. No, not necessarily invoices. It was in the supply chain department. So they had different contracts here, contracts. So now for each of the contracts, document that come to them, they had different few information that they wanted to pick from each of the PDF documents. And the document come in multitudes. Like in a day, sometimes they may have up to like 20, 15 or from those documents. So it was pretty difficult to manage individual bits, as an individual has to normally go into those documents to manage them. So for that reason, they had to find a way to automate the process, and that tool that you can use to manage the extraction of all of those is what is called the AI builder. I think those are the different bits that they have put together now in the automation center. So process map is for you to, it's used to analyze processes. You can use it to analyze processes to understand what the bottlenecks are. Maybe sometime we might be able to explore some of this, but again, some of these scenarios are a bit more advanced for Power Automate and beginners, but it's just for you to understand that these are the possibilities here. So those are the things that they have put together in Automation Center. Process mining is used to understand, it's similar to process mapping, but again, you use this to now see what can be automated within a particular process. And then the AI orb, let me see what they put in here. Again, another thing you need to observe is that because Microsoft keep evolving with their product, so you might log into Power Automate interface tomorrow and you see that they've rearranged some of these bits. Something that used to be here has been taken out, something else has replaced it. So you don't be surprised. It's just things that happen. It happens with Microsoft Office too, although not so frequently, but again, it's just something you need to bear in mind. Okay, so these are some AI capabilities that we have in Power Automate. You can build models, which means you train certain inputs so that you can get some certain output as well. But all of this, maybe hopefully we get to a point where we can explore them. So those are the bits that you have on the left side of the screen. So these are like the menu, different menu that you have on Power Automate. Then if you come here to the right, here you have your accounts. So the account that you're signed in with, you're going to be able to see the details of that account here. Then you have these settings here. But what is important in these settings here is that if I come here to view my licenses, you see what we have here? My licenses, it says that I have a Power Automate for Office 365 license. What that tells you is that this account that I'm using has a Microsoft 365 license, and by virtue of that, it has a Power Automate license. So this is how you can be sure that the account you're using has a license or not. So and by virtue of the Power Automate for Office 365 license that I have Power Automate free. This Power Automate free that I have will give me access to standard connectors, but would not give me access to I won't be able to access premium connectors, which are the likes of the SQL Server, Snowflake, and stuff. I won't be able to build custom connectors. Custom connectors are things that you can build, connectors that you can build on your own. And think about connectors as those tools. I mean, not necessarily tools. They are like links to where you want to pull data from or where do you want to write data to. In the context of Power BI, your connectors will be like an Excel connector. If your data sits on Excel, when you go to get data, everything you click on, they are connectors. So those are connectors. So if your data sits in SQL Server and you want to be able to automate something around that data, or at the end of your automation, you want to write into a SQL Server database, you will need a premium connector. So custom connectors, they are the ones you develop yourself. On-premises connector, they are the whenever you're working with Power Automate, but you want to pick data or write data to somewhere on premises on your system. Then Power Automate has robotic process automation, RPA. So Power Automate is of two parts. There is the cloud and there is the on-premise. So the cloud, that's where we are now. Everything we do here has to do with the cloud. So we are developing stuff that stays online. But whenever you want to automate something that is local to your system, that's when you'll be talking about robotic process automation, RPA. And when you build RPA flows, there are two ways. You either run the RPA attended or you run it unattended. So when you run it attended, what that means is that whenever you want that flow to run, your system must be powered on. And every single thing that happens within the automation, depending on how you built it, you're going to see those things happen, like certain clicks here and there before you get the desired result. That's attended. So you're running the Power Automate like yourself. The system is running it like itself. But unattended, which means whenever you are running an RPA flow attended in an attended mode, if your system is not powered on, the flow would automatically fail. But if you're running it unattended, what that means is that you want the flow to run whether or not your system is powered. So that would mean that you have the flow somehow is saved on a virtual machine, which is on the cloud, but the virtual machine replicates your own laptop and makes your system accessible to the flow so that you can perform the action as though your laptop is put on. So this unattended mode has an additional license. So if you already paid for premium, for example, and let's say premium is priced at let's say $15 per user per month, then if you want to run a Power Automate flow in an unattended manner, you probably will come with an additional cost of maybe $20 per flow or something like that. So you just know that whenever you want to run RPA unattended, there will be an extra cost to it. So there's RPA hosted as well. There's the business process. But again, all of these options, they are tied to the licenses that you have. So if you have licenses that cover them, you see them all checked. And your license will define actually what you can do within Power Automate. So I'm trying to round up now. So these are the things that are important here. The last thing that's important here is your environment. So think of the environment so there are layers to it. So we have the tenant. Lower than the tenant, we have the environment. So think about the tenants like the organization as a whole. Every single organization that subscribes to a Microsoft package would have a tenant. So for us, the tenant is one port 365. This name that you see here, that's a tenant. So which is like where everybody in the organization belong to. And this is like our own house in Microsoft's house, if you understand what I mean. So this is the space that we rented in Microsoft. This is how Microsoft identifies us. So that is our tenant. Then within this tenant now, we can now create environments. So environments are now like different buildings within our own rented space. We rented an acre of land from Microsoft. Within the rented acre of land, we now want to have separate buildings. Maybe there will be a 2-bedroom somewhere, there will be an office space somewhere, there will be a pool somewhere. Those are like environment. And whatever you're building it within an environment. Why this is important is that, think about it, I can create multiple environments here, and then you see I have only one, which is the default environment. I can decide to create multiple other environments. You're not going to be able to do that here. If you want to do that, you need to come here, you go into the admin center to do all of those stuff. So if I create multiple environments here, whatever environment you have, pay attention to this, please. If you have a solution that's supposed to use a Power Apps and a Power Automate, what will make that solution work and for Power Automate to be able to access Power Apps and vice versa is for them to be in the same environment. That's the default. If they're not in the same environment, there will be some more difficult workflow that you need to do for them to be able to interact. So it's like you're saying that someone is in house A, the other one is in house B. We want them to be able to talk. The only way they can talk to one another so that one hears the other is by shouting, which is difficult. You want them to be shouting. But what will make it easy is for you to have put them both in the same room or in the same building. It makes communication easier that way. So that's the concept of environment. So whenever you're building a solution and you know that your Power Apps eventually will interact with some Power Automate flows, then what you should do is that when you go into the Power portal as well, you will see an environment like this. Switch to the environment that your Power Automate is also going to use. So that's a very important thing. So lastly, on the introductory bit is if I come here to my flows. Now, under my flows here, we have different tabs. You have the cloud flows and you have the desktop flows. Those are the two kinds of flows that I explained earlier. So cloud flows are the flows that you develop that will work online. They run online, they're developed online. Desktop flows, they're developed on the desktop, locally on premise on your system, and they naturally should run on your system, but there's a way you can link them online as well. But those are the two kinds of flows. So if I've ever had to develop anything on the desktop, I will see them here on the desktop flows. But because I've never had to, that's why you see that this is blank for now. And for you to develop desktop flows, you need to run a separate installation. So I come here to install and I will install Power Automate for desktop. So if you install Power Automate for desktop, that will sit on your desktop. You need to also sign in, and then you can build all of your flows on the desktop. And once you build it on the desktop, you publish it, you're going to see the desktop flow. You're going to see here. But the kinds of flow that you have, and if anyone has built something within your organization and they shared with you, you see it on the shared with me. Now, if I come here to new flow, what you see here, these are the different kinds of flows. You have an automated flow, you have an instant cloud flow, you have a scheduled flow, and you have desktop flow. So this one that you see here, so this is the co-pilots that we saw on the home page. Describe it to design it. So it's more like you're given a prompt, and then Power Automate tries to use that prompt to design something for you. So when we say automated cloud flow, what that means is that something must happen to initialize or instantiate this flow. So maybe you want the flow to run when anybody submits a form. Or maybe when anyone registers for a webinar, you want them to receive an automated email. So that's the automated cloud flow. Automated cloud flow would expect an action to happen before something else. So that thing that would start the flow is what is called a trigger, and everything that will happen after they are called the actions. So that's automated. So whenever you have a problem that you're building something for, and you know that something must happen to initialize the process, which is outside of you interacting or starting it, then you need to build an automated cloud flow. Instant cloud flow, these are flows that you instantiate yourself. Like you want it to run now and you click run and it runs now. That's an instant cloud flow. There are different ways to instantiate it. There are some physical buttons you can use. There's a virtual button you can use. Different ways. Hopefully we get to see how you can explore this. But instant cloud flow essentially is you want certain process to run, but you are the determinant of when it should run. You don't want it to be triggered by a process. You don't want it to be started by something running. So you want it to be like, okay, I want some emails to go out, but these emails I will decide when it will go out. So you now go on to, maybe you want it to go out at 6 p.m. and you now come on your phone and you say run now, something like that. That's an instant cloud flow. Then the third one is the scheduled cloud flow. So scheduled cloud flow, think about it. This is more like to say that you want the flow to run on a schedule. Maybe every Monday morning, there is a notification or a reminder that you want to send to the leaders about a meeting. And you want this to run every Monday morning. So that's it. That's on a schedule. So any flow that is time bound that you want it to run once in a month, once in a day, once every hour, you need to run that as a scheduled cloud flow. So it has a time tied to it. Then we have the desktop flow. So desktop flow has to do with the flows that are not on the cloud. You are building them on the desktop. That's on the desktop flow that you see here, and describe it to design it. That's the Copilot bit where you tell Copilot to design something for you. So if I go back to the Home tab, you'll see here, this is the window for describe it to design it. So you type something in here. So you want to, let's say, okay, let me just pick one of the options here. And then, so what happens is Power Automate or Copilot now design something for you. So it says, based on what I selected, the trigger is supposed to be SharePoint and the action will be send an email. But in the next class, God willing, we're going to now start to look at how you can use, how we can begin to build something on Power Automate. This is more like an overview of what is possible within Power Automate. I hope this suffices as an introduction. I don't know if maybe we have one question before we call it a close. Thanks everybody for listening on this. Any question from anybody?
Thank you so much, sir, for the insightful session. No questions from my end.
Okay. Thank you, Mercy.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you, kind of.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, you have a question? Okay, now.
Okay. Thanks so much for the enlightenment and everything. All my questions have actually been answered, right? Regarding
Okay.
integrating Power Automate in Power BI.
Uh-huh.
So just I want to clarify some things. So for Microsoft 365 license, are you saying if I have license for Microsoft 365, is enough for me to access Power Automate?
Yes, it
Is that what
is.
you mean by? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. So what you should do is just go on your browser, go to office.com. So if you go to office.com on your browser, then go to all apps. You should see Power Automate as part of the apps that you have access to.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
it should be there ideally.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any other thing? All right. So
That's all.
thanks everybody. Okay. We meet again this time next month by God's grace, and then we'll now come with a scenario that we can build something from. Most likely, I will try to tie it to Power BI, as that is what is important to all of us. So we'll have a scenario where we can now automate something around Power BI. We'll look at that on the next call. Thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, sir. I need to.